Have you ever imagined an electric car with a battery made entirely in the United States, completely independent of Chinese lithium? Well, that's no longer fiction. The American auto industry is about to take a giant leap forward with the arrival of a 100% domestic sodium battery. While the world worries about the high costs and scarcity of lithium, a new solution, born in the California desert, is attracting the attention of engineers, investors, and even competitors. And the most impressive thing? It promises to deliver more for less. Much less. That alone would be reason enough to stop everything and pay attention. But there's more. This innovative battery uses raw materials widely available in the United States, such as sodium extracted from salt flats and western deserts. This eliminates the need for expensive imports, vulnerable to geopolitical crises. The supply chain, previously dependent on Asia, can now be replaced by a local structure, which is a game-changer for the economy. Furthermore, the fact that it's made on American soil stirs national pride. And let's be honest, no one likes to depend on another country to keep running, especially when that other country is a direct competitor like China. But it's not just patriotism driving this revolution. The new sodium battery can reduce the final cost of electric vehicles by up to 30%. That's a frighteningly positive number for those who want to see more affordable cars on the road. And the math is simple. If the cost of the battery drops, the price of the car drops too. And if the car costs less, more people can afford it. And more electric cars on the road means less pollution, less gasoline, and more energy freedom. It seems like a virtuous cycle, the kind we only see when something truly big is happening. Another point worth highlighting is the sustainability of this technology. Unlike lithium mining, which consumes alarming amounts of water and harms the environment, sodium can be extracted in a much less impactful manner. This completely changes the game for those who care about the planet. And these days, this increasingly weighs on consumer choices. Imagine an electric car that's not only clean to use, but also clean at the source of its battery? That's the kind of argument that silences any skeptic. The most curious thing is how this innovation emerged almost silently, far from major technology centers in the heart of the Mojave Desert. It was there that Navolt took the first steps toward what could become the new industry standard. They created a 50 megawatt-hour pilot line and have already begun small-scale production. And we're not talking about laboratory prototypes. These are cells tested under real-world conditions, in scorching heat and abrasive sand, where any failure becomes news in seconds. And you know what's even more exciting? This battery is incredibly versatile. It can be used not only in electric cars, but also in energy storage systems for homes, solar plants, and even the national grid. In other words, we're talking about a technology that can power the future of an entire country. A transformational engine as powerful as the internet or smartphones were in their day. And all this with a raw material as common as table salt. The performance figures behind this new sodium battery may seem exaggerated, but they've been confirmed by independent engineers and industry experts. The cell, developed by Navolt, has already demonstrated an energy capacity of 210 Wh per kilogram, practically on par with the best lithium-ion batteries available today. This means it can power an average car for between 400 and 600 miles on a single charge. Yes, 600 miles. That's more than many gasoline-powered cars can deliver on a full tank. And the best part? Without having to pay a fortune. But what really took the engineers' breath away was the charging speed. In practical tests, the packs were charged from 0 to 80% in just 12 minutes, using standard 4800V chargers, already widely available in the US. This isn't just faster than almost any electric car on the market today. It redefines what it means to stop and charge. For those who travel frequently or simply hate waiting, this is music to their ears. A coffee, a trip to the bathroom, and voila, a full battery again. The battery also stood out for its durability. During extensive field testing, the cells withstood more than 5,000 complete charge and discharge cycles with less than 10% loss in capacity. This equates to more than 10 years of daily use before any noticeable drop in battery life. And if you live in a place where the cold freezes even thawed, this will interest you. The sodium battery maintained stable performance even in temperatures ranging from 25 degrees Celsius to 65 Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, lithium batteries typically lose up to 30% of their performance in extreme cold. This data didn't come from a pretty PowerPoint presentation. It came from tests conducted under the technical supervision of figures like Sandy Munro, one of the industry's most respected engineers, known for his sharp criticism and zero patience for fallacies. He inspected Navolt's line, checked the data, and uttered a phrase that echoed like thunder through the industry. The greatest practical advance since the first commercial lithium cell. This coming from a guy who's torn apart every inch of a Tesla and doesn't spare praise lightly. Another point that impressed many people was the compatibility with existing electric platforms. The new sodium cells were designed to work in both 400 and 800-volt systems, meaning they can be fitted into the same structures currently used for lithium-ion batteries without major changes to factories, assembly lines, or management systems. This takes a huge burden off the shoulders of automakers who live in fear of technologies that require multi-million-dollar restructuring. Even with all these qualities, there was still skepticism about its viability at scale. After all, it's not enough to simply work well in the lab or in luxury prototypes. The question has always been, can it be mass-produced at a competitive cost and with reliability? That's where Navolt surprised once again. The battery requires 33% fewer coating steps compared to solid-state batteries, and the formation time, the period in which the cell is charged and discharged repeatedly until it reaches stability, has been reduced to just 1 or 2 cycles. This is essentially a third of what lithium requires. If these batteries truly deliver on their promises, it's only natural that major automakers will start moving in. And they already are. Tesla, Ford, and Stellantis, to name a few, have already begun negotiations with Navolt. The news has hit the industry like a bombshell, especially since Elon Musk is reportedly considering using this sodium battery in the long-awaited Tesla Model 2, the affordable $25,000 vehicle that promises to bring EVs to the masses. The logic is clear. To achieve this aggressive price point, cutting battery costs is essential. And sodium, more than any other material, offers this advantage. Today, Tesla already dominates much of the production chain with its 4680 cells, manufactured at an impressive rate, around 3.5 million units per week. But even at this scale, these batteries are still targeted at more expensive models, such as the Model Y AWD and the Cybertruck. The Model 2, on the other hand, needs something radically cheaper, without sacrificing safety and durability. The entry of the sodium battery into this scenario would be the perfect trump card to unlock this new generation of popular electric vehicles. And it's not just cost that weighs on this decision. Simplicity of integration also plays a role. Because the sodium battery structure is compatible with existing electric platforms, Tesla wouldn't need to make major changes to its assembly lines. This speeds up the process and drastically reduces the investment required to adapt production. For a company that values efficiency and rapid scaling of new technologies, this is a boon. Musk knows this, and if there's one thing he doesn't miss, it's an opportunity to get ahead. From a strategic perspective, this change of course represents much more than a technical upgrade. It's a chess move amid the silent war for energy independence. Tesla has already given clear signals that it wants to dominate every step of the chain, from mining to software, and adopting sodium batteries would be a bold step toward this autonomy. Eliminating dependence on Asian suppliers and reducing pressure on lithium prices are moves that not only strengthen the company, but also resonate well with American governments and consumers. And of course, when Elon Musk enters the scene, the entire market reacts. Many companies began revising their electrification strategies upon hearing rumors of Tesla switching to sodium. This creates a domino effect. Suppliers, startups, and competitors are forced to rethink their plans, fearing being left behind. Deep down, everyone knows that when Tesla bets on a technology, it's not messing around. And sooner or later, the entire industry will follow suit. The lull didn't last long. In June 2025, Donald Trump signed a measure that fueled the debate over the future of electric cars in the United States. By repealing California's emissions standards, which required 100% of new cars sold to be electric or hydrogen fuel cell powered by 2035, he not only nullified one of the country's most ambitious environmental laws, but also completely disrupted the automotive industry. Suddenly, the strongest incentive for electrification evaporated, and automakers were forced to improvise a new strategy to survive in this new landscape. With the lifting of the zero-emission vehicle requirement, companies lost one of the main drivers that justified significant investments in research and innovation for EVs. And this directly impacts costs. Without ZEV, zero-emission vehicle credits, many brands were left with tight profit margins, precisely because current batteries are still too expensive to maintain competitive prices without government support. And this is where the sodium battery comes in as a kind of unexpected lifeline. It allows for cost reductions without relying on subsidies or regulatory changes. Automakers that were betting all their chips on lithium-based solutions suddenly found themselves in a bind. The supply chain remained vulnerable, the prices of these materials remained high, and with the withdrawal of California's incentives, there was no room for error. They needed to find a financially viable and scalable solution. And quickly. Sodium technology, previously seen as a promising alternative, became a leading player overnight, simply because it made sense on paper and was beginning to prove its worth in practice. This forced change, of course, also had another effect. It put even more pressure on recharge times and production costs. In a more competitive market, with wary consumers and squeezed margins, every second counts. And the fact that the sodium battery charges from 0 to 80% in 12 minutes has become more than a technical statistic. It's become a selling point, a headline, and a differentiator. The average consumer may not know the difference between WKG and a training cycle, but they fully understand what it's like to charge their car in the time it takes to grab a coffee. With the changing political landscape, it became clear that the future of electrification in the U.S. could no longer rely solely on government incentives. Companies needed to find self-sustaining business models, and this required batteries that were not only effective, but also cheap and simple to produce. The sodium cell production model, with fewer steps and more accessible materials, was a perfect fit for this new context. What's also striking about this new chapter in electrification is the environmental impact of the transition from lithium to sodium. While lithium batteries require intensive mining, with excessive water consumption and severe soil degradation, sodium can be extracted much cleaner. It's more abundant, easier to refine, and doesn't generate the same kind of environmental devastation. When it comes to green batteries, it's not enough to think about what comes out the tailpipe. You need to consider what happens before the battery reaches the car. And here, sodium has an almost indecent advantage. The abundance of sodium on the planet is so great that it almost seems like a joke compared to lithium. We're talking about an element up to 1,000 times more present in the Earth's crust. This reduces not only the environmental impact of mining, but also geopolitical risk. While lithium is concentrated in countries like Chile, China, and Australia, sodium is found practically everywhere, including large reserves in the United States itself. This means less dependence, less diplomatic tension, and more energy security for those investing in EVs in the long term. Furthermore, sodium batteries eliminate the use of expensive heavy metals such as cobalt and nickel. This not only reduces production costs, but also avoids a series of ethical and environmental issues associated with the extraction of these materials. It's impossible to ignore reports of child labor and precarious conditions in cobalt mines in Africa. Switching to a technology that eliminates this shadowy part of the production chain is, frankly, one of the most sensible decisions the industry can make today. Another little discussed but incredibly relevant point is the replacement of copper with aluminum in sodium batteries. Copper, besides being expensive, is also limited and subject to constant fluctuations in the international market. Aluminum, on the other hand, is cheap, lightweight, and much more abundant. This change helps keep battery weight under control, even though sodium, on its own, is slightly heavier than lithium. The end result is a simpler, more stable cell that's less vulnerable to supply crises. The thermal safety of these batteries also doesn't go unnoticed. Sodium is chemically less reactive than lithium, which means less risk of overheating, explosions, or fires. Problems that, while rare, still generate considerable distrust in those considering switching to an electric vehicle. This stability is particularly important in extreme temperatures, where lithium batteries often fail. And let's face it, no one wants to leave home in the winter and discover that their car simply won't start. Even with all these qualities, there's still a technical limitation that needs to be addressed: energy density. Sodium batteries still lag behind lithium batteries in this regard. While lithium batteries offer 120 to 260 kWh, sodium batteries still hover between 75 and 160 kWh, depending on their composition. This means that, theoretically, they store less energy in the same space. But the story doesn't end there. Recent research has already raised this number to between 160 and 200 kWh, a considerable leap in less than 2 years, and too fast to ignore. What's more, this density difference, previously seen as an insurmountable obstacle, begins to lose relevance when you look at the bigger picture. For example, even if the battery pack is slightly larger or heavier, the actual impact on the car's performance isn't as great as it seems. One technician even compared the difference to the weight of an extra passenger in the car. Nothing that drastically changes fuel consumption or comfort. For high-performance vehicles, this could be a problem. But for mainstream EVs, which prioritize cost and practicality, it's perfectly acceptable. This realization is causing manufacturers to refocus on what really matters to the average consumer: price, reliable minimum range, recharge speed, and durability. And in this regard, sodium batteries are delivering more than expected. The promise of 300 miles of range, about 480 kilometers, with a sodium system is no longer a futuristic idea, but something that has been realized in the most recent tests. And the most interesting thing? With each new advancement in internal materials, this number only tends to rise. Furthermore, the speed at which these batteries charge partially compensates for their lower density. Even with a slightly shorter range, being able to recharge in 10 or 12 minutes completely changes the user experience. It's a typical case of walking less, but stopping less. For many people, this model is more appealing than charging a super battery that takes an hour or more to fully charge. The feeling of freedom, of not having to plan every stop, ends up weighing more heavily in practice than the actual distance of the range. This behavior is shaping automakers' focus. If before everything revolved around performance and range, now the idea is to balance cost and usability. The new trend is to make electric cars that aren't just for enthusiasts or those who can spend $60,000 or $70,000. It's about making vehicles that are affordable and easy to maintain, with batteries that can withstand years of use without needing replacement. And sodium, with its simplicity and stability, is beginning to fill this space with a resourcefulness few expected. While major automakers adjust their routes and engineers work tirelessly to adapt production lines, there's another aspect that deserves closer scrutiny: consumer behavior. Consumers who previously viewed electric vehicles as futuristic or niche are now beginning to see them as a real option. But not every EV attracts attention. It's the affordable ones. The person who drives a used combustion engine sedan, or who thinks twice about filling up because of the price of gasoline, wants an electric car that fits their budget and delivers reliability. And this shift will only happen if the battery allows it. This is precisely where sodium comes in full force, because it's no longer about making the most powerful, most luxurious car, or one with a spaceship dashboard. It's about putting an EV in the garages of ordinary families who need affordable, practical, and safe mobility. And with a battery that costs half as much as a lithium battery, that won't explode in the Texas heat or freeze in the Minnesota blizzards, the game changes. Electric mobility stops being a privilege and becomes part of everyday life. Furthermore, a quiet revolution is also taking place in the stationary energy storage sector. The same qualities that make sodium batteries a good option for popular vehicles, low cost, long lifespan, and thermal safety, also make them perfect for backup systems in homes, solar plants, and even industrial facilities. This expands production scale, reduces unit costs, and generates technological synergies that benefit the automotive sector as a whole. And when you produce more, you pay less. It's a wheel that turns itself. It's no coincidence that companies like Bedrock Materials are already declaring that their commercial versions of sodium batteries are ready for operation. One of the engineers responsible, a former Tesla engineer, stated that their model delivers up to 300 miles of range at a lower cost than any current LFP battery. This not only attracts attention from the industry, but also signals the green light for startups, local governments, and even urban transportation companies seeking to electrify their fleets urgently and on a budget. Another curious fact that has gone unnoticed by many is the absurd durability shown by some sodium cells. There are reports of prototypes maintaining over 80% capacity even after 4,000 to 5,000 cycles. And there are predictions in optimized models of up to 50,000 cycles over their useful life, which is practically the equivalent of 30 years of use, considering a daily cycle. If this is confirmed, the concept of changing the battery could disappear for many users. And this changes everything: cost, maintenance, warranty, resale value.